Hello, and welcome to the first ever episode of the SciManDan podcast. Thanks very much for being here. I'm sure you're wondering what it's all about. So basically, the idea is we're going to try and mirror, if you will, the YouTube channel that I've got. So if any of you are not aware of that, I run a YouTube channel. It's called SciManDan, and basically the premise of the channel is I started it off debunking flat earthers, and it kind of went on to there, and I went on to different conspiracies and things like that. So the content of this podcast is going to be similar to that. I've labelled it as science meets conspiracy head on, or science collides with conspiracy, because they're almost like two sides of the same coin. It's going to be a weekly podcast, and we're going to have loads of guests. We've got loads of guests lined up. So let's get started. Joining me this week is my ever-loyal co-host. He runs the successful YouTube channels Conspiracy Catz and Baldy Catz. He's a working teacher on the front lines of education and supports the mighty Blackburn Rovers. It's Catz. Welcome, buddy. How you doing?
Oh, thanks for having us. I'm really looking forward to this. And yeah, Blackburn Rovers are mighty, the mightiest, mate. Thank you for pointing that out. You put me in a good mood there.
You mean that they were mighty? They were once mighty. They're not quite so mighty now, are they?
They were. I think it's all relative. It's all down to perspective, I think.
Yeah. Let's not mention that my team were for a brief moment top of the Premier League this weekend. Anyway, so Catz, you run a couple of channels, don't you? Kind of similar to what I do. How long have you been doing it now?
I think we started off at a pretty similar time. So what we're looking at, nearly 3 years. Yeah, I think I'm just over 2 years. I think the Baldy Catz, the smaller channel I've got, probably about 2 years. I think Conspiracy that's just knocking up now? 3, but it's gone quick.
2 years for Baldy Catz.
2 years, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Time flies though.
It does, yeah. It does. I mean, I was thinking this the other day because Catz and we do the Flat Earth Awards every year, and this will be the 3rd year. And I remember I got a comment on the last year's Flat Earth Awards, and it was from a flat earther saying, these won't happen next year. It's not going to happen, as if to say some sort of, by then the whole world will know that the world is flat. So we're gonna highlight that comment at the start of this year's Flat Earth Awards. So do you think it would be fair to say that that your channel is the Robin to my Batman? Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, you know what? I like that analogy. I do like that analogy. I think we've grown up together. You've certainly grown up a lot faster, but we've had a very similar sort of path. Just I think in every way yours has definitely been better. So that's not a bad analogy. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I got lucky. I got lucky with the gate. I mean, that's all it's down to, isn't it? The one video that separates me from everyone else is the gate guy.
Well, I don't know about that. I think hard work as well. I think you've been consistent.
Maybe.
As far as I'm aware, you've not missed a day. You've not missed a day, have you? Consistently, 2 videos a week, every week.
I don't think I have.
Keeping the quality high.
I don't think I have. I think you're right. I think I've done every Friday.
Yeah.
I've not thought of that. Yeah. I think I have, Wow. Yeah, there we go. I think I did 150. I was thinking it was the 150th Flat Earth Friday this week or last week, maybe. I can't remember. But anyway, so yeah, we are heavily involved in the Flat Earth scene, aren't we? And I thought what we'd do when we start these shows is we'll have a quick roundup of what's been going on this week in Flat Earth. And it's a bit quiet this week, isn't it? Or this month has been a bit quiet, wouldn't you say?
Well, I think Flat Earth they are quiet at the minute because another YouTuber, Mr. Sensible, he sent a high altitude balloon up, didn't he? And recorded.
He did, yeah.
The curvature of the Earth.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of them are keeping their heads. I mean, what do you think they make of that?
Well, my first thoughts were that they were going to come out and give it the fake stuff, that he's faked it or whatever. But I think that'd be very hard to prove or try and explain, because you can tell that footage is absolutely genuine. They're probably scurrying around trying to figure out ways to discredit him, but it was very good footage.
It was, but what it also does as well is it just shows actually how realistic it is to achieve to do something like that. And we know that the flat Earth community, they do like to put a lot of money, pool money together and support people, etc. So where is the excuse going to come from that they are not going to do something similar themselves? And I'd love it. I would absolutely love to see them actually do that, to do something similar, get their own footage, analyze it, and it would be pretty interesting to see what conclusions they draw.
It would. But the thing I'd worry about is, or for them anyway, is it would go the same way that their $20,000 gyroscope experiment went, which didn't go too well for them, did it? Bless them.
What I like about that is they just completely invented a whole new brand of science. We didn't get the results we wanted, so therefore we are now going to pretend that the results we got prove something that we've never mentioned before.
Yeah, absolutely. That's them to a T. Really, them to a T. So I'm really pleased you can join, mate. So you've seen some of the guests that we've got coming on. Without giving anything away, what do you think? What do you think of the guests we've got coming up in the
the guests you've got coming up, you've got one of my, and I won't give any names away, but you've got one of my favorite science communicators out there. You've got one of my favorite YouTube channels out there that I think everybody knows or has seen a video of those in the feed at some point. Huge YouTubers. You've got some unbelievably educated people, and I'm just wondering like how I'm on that list. This has to be the trial, because if it goes wrong, it can go wrong with me. No. Because the others are amazing.
You're not on the list per se. You're the, as I said, the ever loyal co-host. So you're not quite up to the levels of some of the guests we've got yet.
I'm the canary in the coal mine. Any problems could have been caused here. That's what I am. But I am so excited. You've just got some amazing, and I won't give anything away. I won't spoil it for you, but I'm really excited to get the chance to listen to and speak to some of these people.
I know, should be fun. So let's just quickly, you talked about the level of education there. Let's just quickly touch on ourselves. Your training's in biology, is that right? Your initial training?
Yeah, my degree was in biology, and I did a master's in ecology with a dissertation that was based actually on evolution and sexual selection. Nice. But then when I went into teaching, my very, very first teaching post, going back 20 years, they needed someone who could teach physics. And so I started off teaching physics, and then from the last 20 years, that's been my history, sort of teaching physics up to A level, as well as biology and chemistry as well. But I've really morphed from a biology specialist into a physics specialist.
Yeah, so it's fair to say your onions. Me personally, I make it quite apparent. I'm quite open about it. I yet to have a degree. My degree is one that I work from home, an astronomy and planetary science one. I've been doing it for about 4 years, part-time. I'm a bit of when it comes to science, I'm a bit of a jack of all trades and a master of none. So I like to dip my fingers and toes in a lot of things. If you had to ask me a speciality, it probably would be astronomy. So yeah, we cover a lot of bases between. Is that fair? We cover a lot of bases between us.
Absolutely. I think one of the first things I said to you when we first met was in some areas I definitely fulfill that old adage or joke that those that can't do teach, because I was teaching an astronomy GCSE, all the content, and it was great, it was interesting, but you put a telescope in my hand and asked me to find a planet and track it, and I haven't got a clue, so definitely, but I love astronomy. I love it. Do you get stargazing much? Is that something you do?
I don't do it anywhere near as much as I should. I've got a couple of guys in a group chat that from the channel who do it regularly, and they produce some phenomenal stuff. They really do. The stuff you can get just from being an amateur and having your own scope and your own software and things like that, you can really get some quality images. Absolutely. Okay, go on.
No, I was going to say I saw BBC News article this week, and there was a 17-year-old, I think, who'd been given a telescope, and he'd had a run of fortune. He had some clear nights, and in 1 week he'd managed to track Mars every night and overlay the images and got a cracking footage of Mars actually rotating.
Yeah, I think I saw that.
Amazing.
Yeah. There was another guy who caught the ISS. Caught the ISS over the sun and the moon. Really, really high quality images. I know Reds does that quite a bit as well, doesn't he? Resretric. But that's always impressed me that people have been able to get that such high quality images of the ISS during those sorts of shots, because it's very difficult to play with filters and things like that.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So we're gonna crack on. We both of us have looked. I think it's fair to say looked extensively into conspiracies during our time on YouTube. Since I've started Tinfoil Tuesday, I've lost count of the amount of conspiracies I've looked at. What would you say has been the weirdest one or the craziest one that you've heard or seen since you've been doing it?
The craziest one is that there is a crater on the moon, which is supposedly a reflection of the star Polaris. And the moon itself actually isn't a solid object. I think it was coined as a reflection of solidity. And that crater on the moon is some sort of an image or a mirror of a decapitated tree of life, which somehow held power over the earth a long time ago. And I'm still trying to piece together what it means. Wow. But apparently that conspiracy ties everything together. Every conspiracy, whether it be Flat Earth, JFK, it all ties back to this crater on the moon. And I think Aristarchus was its name.
Wow. That's some conspiracy. I mean, that's top mine. That's top my, the weirdest one I think, I mean, there's been a lot, but it's the people that, the Mud Fossil University talks about it quite a lot. The people that think that there were giants that walked around the earth. I'm not talking about, people that are a bit bigger than normal people. They thought there were genuine 100, 200, 300 feet people and animals that inhabited the earth that are now buried, and their remains are just the natural landscape of the earth. I think there's one of them was that he thought Angel Falls. So he was explaining that Angel Falls was an old artery of a being.
Wow.
And the foot, it's absolutely crazy stuff. And I don't get it. I don't know where it comes from.
Is that just pareidolia then? Them seeing big mountains and just assuming that they are, I don't know, thigh bones or whatever?
It explains a lot, doesn't it, pareidolia? For anyone who doesn't know that, pareidolia is the phenomenon of thinking you're seeing, is it human faces or human body parts or human faces in regular things, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or body parts or things like in regular things. You see it quite a lot on the people that look at the Mars stuff, the rocks on Mars. They think there's people, or objects, or animals on Mars. And I do it all the time. You look up to the clouds and you can easily find shapes in clouds.
It's how the brain is evolved, isn't it, to recognize face? Yeah. Such an important part of how we function and what we do. The brain is always looking to find, features that it recognizes. And I think the most interesting pareidolia I've ever suffered from was the Jesus in a loaf of bread. I don't know if you saw that a few years ago, and it looks so much like him. Somebody sliced the bread open. Jesus is there,
I've seen the Jesus. I've seen the Jesus in a dog's butthole. I've seen that one.
I've not seen that one. No. That's brilliant.
So here's a question then from your evolutionary background. What does how does pareidolia, the phenomenon of pareidolia, how is that an advantage, evolutionary speaking?
Well, I can only guess, and I'm sure some of the guests you've got coming on are going to be able to explain it far, far better than me, because I am just guessing.
Yes.
But perhaps there was a time when our brains were functioning and people function better in communities or were able to reproduce more if they were around people of their own species, etc.
Right.
And maybe, the ability to sort of recognize facial features and recognize somebody as being your species, part of yourself, maybe that aided in that sort of building of a social life and bringing people together, perhaps. I'm just guessing.
Pre-language, I assume.
Yeah, we're talking like way before I was born. Long time.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah, I love thinking about questions like that. Like any sort of things, how would that be of an evolutionary advantage? It's always I always find interest in thinking about those sorts of things. So yeah, that's good. Pareidolia is a good one because it could wipe off so many conspiracies that we've seen before. But when we talk about the ones that we see all the time, so the ones that are quite tied in with science, so your flat Earth, your space is fake, your moon landing conspiracies, those sorts of ones, how is it that, or why are we allowing these conspiracy theorists to hijack science and use it against us or use it against mainstream?
That's a great question, and I think there's a couple of strands to that question. I think some people, the people who aren't huge YouTube figures who are raking money in to perpetuate, etc. But if we're going to talk about the honest conspiracy theorists who believe, for example, the Earth is flat, I think a lot of it lies in the fact that a lot of what they bring up to them is counterintuitive, right? If they've not perhaps had a grasp of science at school, if they've not enjoyed it, to them it might be counterintuitive of, oh, hang on, how can we have an atmosphere next to space? And, they just can't believe, or it's a refusal to believe an explanation from somebody else. But I think it starts with, I think some things to them are slightly counterintuitive, but then that's mixed in with a stubbornness to then just hold that position and maybe a lack of ability to reason outside of it as well.
Yeah, you're right, and they have their proponents, don't they, who seem to be able to articulate scientific words and scientific explanations. And I mean, you'll know of who I'm talking about. They're able to weave a story using that science, which seems to fly in the face of mainstream science, and they get droves of people believing their version of science.
A prime example at the minute that I'm really annoyed by, I'll be honest, is, and I won't use names, but the people at the minute who are perpetuating the whole germ theory is wrong and it's all train theory. People who are using words that like PCR testing, Koch's postulates, isolation of virus, PCR tests, etc. Did I say that twice? I can't remember. But people are using, this kind of language and explaining, what Koch, or trying to explain what Koch's postulates is for, but a virus can't fit it. And anyone who doesn't know anything about biology and what the history of Koch's postulates and how they have to be modified, etc., even intelligent people might listen to that and think, "Wow, that's quite compelling."
They're going to take their word for it, aren't they? Yeah.
Well, and if they're articulate, and some of these people are medical professionals, although none of them in the field of microbiology and virology, which is no surprise. And they can be very convincing. Let's say they dress up that language, and if they present it in a well articulated manner without a knowledge of Koch's postulates and biology, how can you possibly debunk them? So it can be quite swaying.
Yeah, it's a bit of a minefield at the moment, isn't it? With that and the masks and the whole COVID hoax and everything like that. It's just there's so much misinformation out there that I think it would take thousands of people like us to just try and combat that sort of misinformation. There's just that much of it out there. I see it all the time. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. It's very difficult to combat that.
It is, and what doesn't help is I think a lot of these theories have a tiny fraction of what they say that might be scientifically correct. So, for example, the masks at the minute, we all know. I mean, it's not going to say that if you've got a mask on and viruses are coming out of your face in droplets of water, that mask is going to reduce the amount that gets into the atmosphere. We know that. Yeah. And nobody out there is saying that a mask is 100% going to be effective. But obviously, the layperson knows that, well, that means the masks are going to drastically reduce the spread. But the conspiracy theorists, they'll take that and they'll say masks are proven not to work.
Yeah, they will.
They'll take that slither of truth and they'll distort it into something that is just not right and then spread it like a rumor. And then people have a catchphrase. All these people have that catchphrase now. Masks don't work, it's proven. Yeah. And that's the power of social media.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what in terms of your own personal experiences with conspiracies in real life, have you had many? I mean, I've had a couple where I've done a bit of work in schools, as you know, and I was teaching a science lesson one day, covering a science lesson, and the moon landing came up, and because it was a trendy thing to think, half the class were adamant that we hadn't gone to the moon. And it rattled me a bit because obviously we have. But what surprised me was that such a large amount of people or large amount of kids in a school were questioning this. But then were they questioning it because they were going with the trendy thing to say, or did they actually believe that? I don't know. What about you? Have you had any real experiences?
I mean, I have, but it's funny you should mention the moon landing thing. One thing I used to do every year when it comes to Christmas, Christmas in a school, you make the lessons a bit more interesting for the kids, still educational, but what I used to do every week, if I had a class twice in that week before Christmas, in the first lesson I had them, I'd take a vote at the beginning of the lesson and ask, have you heard of the moon landing conspiracy? And then I'd get them to vote, how many of you believe that we landed on the moon? And almost every hand would go up and they'd be like, yeah, of course we did, sir. And then I would show them that, the Fox moon landing hoax video. Yes, and that would kind of take the lesson. And at the end of the lesson, I'd ask them to vote again. And I was amazed. I did this time in, time out with lots of classes. All the hands would go up and they'd be like, oh, it's got to be a hoax. I can't believe it. Yeah. And then in the second lesson of that week, when they came back, I dissected all of the, why the flag should have moved the way it moved, the no stars in the sky, and I broke down and used it as an educational tool, if you like. And then by the end of it, the kids were all like, "Oh yeah, we did land on the moon." So the moon landing one is one that I've encountered, but probably I engineered that myself, really.
Yeah. Do you think that age bracket are most susceptible to these sorts of things? The amount of time they spend on social media?
I think so. And I think for a couple of reasons. I think one, for the reason that they are young and they do look at adults who are well-spoken and take on board perhaps more than they should, what that person's saying, put a lot more faith into them.
Impressionable, aren't they?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And secondly, I think it was certainly in the case of the kids I was teaching, they don't at that point have the reasoning ability of their own or the scientific knowledge of their own. And it goes back to what we said, a lot of things are counterintuitive. It is counterintuitive that a flag with no atmosphere should be flapping until you actually, think about conservation of momentum and so on. And then you realize, So, but yeah, I think that's why. So I think having those kids being exposed to this sort of nonsense now, it is pretty dangerous. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It is. I haven't really experienced much more. I know for a fact there's people in my area who are anti-mask, just from some of the Facebook groups in my local area. But in terms of, I've definitely never met a flat earther in real life yet. I know one lives quite near me. Well, he's not really a flat earther, he's a flat earth apologist. I think you probably know who that is.
Yeah.
But I've never bumped into one in real life. And I always wonder what they would say to me in real life. Would they be aggressive or would they just say, hey, look, it's you, and just talk to me? I guess it depends on the flat earther, doesn't it?
Well, I think it probably does. I wouldn't be surprised if they just ignore you. Because I think if they come up to you and try to convince you otherwise, I think deep down they know that they're not going to win, a civil sort of discussion around the science of the topic, because I think they know deep down they don't understand what a lot of the terms are.
Yeah.
So unless they are extreme and they want to be very argumentative and just come for an argument, I wouldn't be surprised if they ignore you.
All right, I'll put this to you. I turn up at Speaker's Corner when they're all down there, and I just stand there and watch. Then what? What do they do then?
Right. Well, what you're doing the equivalent of going to the most extreme. Like, if you think of all the flat earthers and all the conspiracies, the most extreme ones are the ones who are going to go preach. So that's perhaps not a good idea. Yeah.
No, I won't do
back
that.
Away from that.
Yeah, I won't do that. Yeah. So let's just stick on flat Earth at the moment, because we are both probably most experienced in that. If there's one thing I really want in terms of a guest, it's someone who is a really good psychologist, because I want to talk to them about the psychology of conspiracy theorists. I've not got a guest like that yet, but I would really like one, because we talked about this. A lot of people talked about this before, but the potential of the flat earthers, especially having this cult behavior. I mentioned recently in a video that apparently, I've been told, one of the first things that cults do is tell you that everyone else is lying to you. And that's one of the first things that flat earthers say, isn't it? That everyone is lying to you.
Well, that's it. Everyone is lying to you, but also, they like to use this term of everybody who isn't lying to you is just asleep. And I think, to me, I'm not a psychologist, but the fact that they use that term, everybody else is asleep, says to me that they consider themselves obviously to be awake, for a start. But, but what does that mean? They consider themselves to be privy to this special knowledge, and that must be a nice feeling to them. Me and my mates who know this are all privy to something that you're not.
Yeah.
And, I think for some people that maybe have certain, how can I put it? Not security issues, but confidence issues, etc., can be very appealing, I think.
Yeah, and they've got a real community, haven't they? And it must be difficult. It's why I praise people like Seek Truth, because if you're in that community, it's a comfort blanket, isn't it? And if you want to leave that community, it must be incredibly difficult. And the people that do it are very brave, which is why I spoke to, and you spoke to him as well, didn't you? But it must be, sometimes I'm sure there must be people who think, what am I doing? The Earth's not flat, but they're too scared to leave the community.
Well, you've got, I think, in the real world, outside of the YouTube, flat Earth is so far spread apart.
Yeah.
That the community is built online, and I think a lot of the people, if you look at the amount of time and the hours every day that they're spending online, that's where their friends are.
Yeah.
Not in the real world. That's where they are. That's where they're spending the time. And you're not just walking away from flat Earth. You're walking away, like say, from the friends that you've built up, because we know how they treat people. They haven't really got time for people that walk away. Once you go flat, you don't go back and all that.
Absolutely.
And they're giving up a lot.
And how many people, though, do you reckon that is all they've got, though? How many people do you think don't have really the associates and the friends in real life, and how many people rely heavily on this online community?
I genuinely think the people that are really heavily into these conspiracies rely hugely on the online side of it. Absolutely hugely. I mean, I see, and I'm sure you've seen the same, flat earthers making comments about how frustrated they are with the family, how frustrated they are with their friends since they've seen the light, since they've woken up. I've lost friends, I've lost family, we don't speak anymore, because obviously the friends and the family in the world have just said, you need to sort yourself out, this is nonsense. And I think the flat earth makes them alienate themselves from a lot of people. And if you haven't got other flat earthers around you in the real world, your only place to go is online.
Yeah, it must, in a way, it must be difficult. I struck up some dialogue with Patricia Steer on Instagram. We're both cat lovers, so we struck up a conversation regarding cats, and I said to her, funny enough, cats, and I asked her how she was and would she be interested in having a chat with me, because obviously she's now out of the community. Her beliefs haven't changed, but she's out of the community. But she didn't want any part of it whatsoever. She's so wounded by what happened to her that she doesn't want any more part of it. And that's the real sad thing. That's the sad part of it, isn't it? That you could be outcast like that.
The vitriol is immense, isn't it? The vitriol is absolutely immense. It's a very toxic community online, and it's easy to be online, isn't it? It's easy to say what you want to say, and it is. Call people what you want to call people, and I think that's it's a sad state of affairs, and it's got nothing to do with the topic at hand either, is it? No. Absolutely nothing to do with the topic at hand.
Very rarely. Yeah.
So
shame. the question is, mate, are we doing enough? Are people like you and me doing enough? Is there anything else we can do to stop this spread of misinformation? Is there enough of us?
That is an excellent question. I think there's obviously an online community that we've spoken about, and I think our presence in the online community is known to everybody.
Yes.
I don't think there's a flat earther out there who wouldn't know certainly who you are. I think most flat earthers out there would know who I am.
Yes.
But where do the flat earthers, become created? They are created online from the information they take in, but because they've been equipped in childhood to be susceptible to that. So, I think schools and education and social, not social welfare, what's the word I'm looking for? But, the social aspects and the environment when they're bringing up, that's where I think a flat earther's mindset is formed. So how do we change that? How do we stop conspiracy theories from spreading in the real world?
Yeah, you're right. It's very, because we're trying to fight a fire, a ginormous fire with a little bucket of water, really, aren't we? We need to, like you say, try and, but cutting it out at the root is incredibly difficult. It's stuff that's, like you say, entrenched in their childhood and them growing up. And I've said that quite a few times, that the flat earthers especially, they seem to be predisposed to believe in conspiracies. So they were, before someone was a flat earther, you can guarantee that they had a conspiracy theory about something else, whether it was the moon landing or whatever. And then as soon as they heard flat earth, they were like, bang, perfect. I can definitely run with this because, that's their, like I said, they're predisposed. It's very difficult.
It ties everything together for them, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it's like we were saying before, the whole virus thing. 18 months ago, when I was around, I'd never heard one flat earther, not one, talk about viruses as being things that don't exist. Not one. I'd not heard one flat earther mention Koch's postulates or talk about germ theory or terrain theory. It just wasn't a thing. No. But as soon as the virus hits and somebody online says, "Oh, you know what? I don't think viruses exist." Now it's like all of them have now suddenly gone, yeah, I'll take that, I'll accept that.
Yeah. And what doesn't help, like what doesn't help is that a lot of them are anti-vaccine. So as soon as they found out that a vaccine's coming, then obviously that means that the vaccine is being created for a reason by the government because they want to control. It's just endless, isn't it? It's just absolutely. They are very good. You're right. They're very good at tying things together, aren't they? The different conspiracies and it ends up with just being controlled, doesn't it? That's their big thing, being lied to and being controlled.
Yeah, everything that's done, everything that's happening is a grand master plan. And I mean, they all might come up with slightly different versions of what that plan is.
Yeah.
But they have and they might, none of them have got a clue who's running it or how they're running it. But there is a plan. Yeah. The plan, the pandemic is to make money for, the drug companies who will be owned by somebody, I'm sure, that they've found out, who also invests in NASA, or something. And it's all tied together. But you can't break the mindset. I think what didn't help to start with was social media and YouTube, realizing how many views that got 5 or 6 years ago and blowing it up.
Yeah, it didn't help.
And they really now need to rein it in. Yeah,
well, hopefully, people like, I don't know who, people like D Marble, he hasn't done anything for ages on Flat Earth. And that particular one, it seems to be dying off. But like you say, a lot of them are moving on to the virus stuff and all that. But anyway, that was a lovely chat, mate. Thank you. We really got into that. And I definitely would like to get a psychologist on. So if we can pose some of those questions to them. So this would normally be the time in the show where we would play Guess the Conspiracy. So I've got a little jingle for this. Do you want to hear it?
I'm dying to, mate. Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Heavenly.
You like that, do you? Yeah.
Who did those? How did you get those? Is that you singing?
Wolf did that for me.
That's amazing.
He's the man. Isn't
That's
he?
great.
He's the man. That joke might fly over people's heads. But so this would be the the time of the show where Catz and I will challenge our guest. So what we're going to do is we're going to give the guest 3 conspiracy theories, and they're going to have to guess which one is correct. And Catz and I each week, or each time that Catz is on, and if he's not on, he'll give me one anyway to say we're going to invent a conspiracy off the top of our heads, and the job of the guest is to pick the real one. So what do you think? Do you think we can trick a few guests with that? I think we can. I reckon I can come up with a slightly believable, wacky conspiracy.
I've got I have. So can I try one on you now?
Go on.
Just one on you.
Go on.
Okay.
So is this going to be fake?
Well, I want you to guess.
Okay.
And I'll tell you.
Go on then.
Okay. Clouds are made of salt.
I think that is going to be. I think that's a real one.
It is a real one, yeah. It's one I've seen. Somebody make a YouTube video on clouds are made of salt. Absolutely, yeah.
Because I can believe that someone believes that because they are white. Maybe that's
They are, yeah. They are the same colour as salt.
Yeah. So it doesn't take much, does it? So yeah, what we do is, and because of the fact I think there's so many wacky conspiracies that are real out there, it will be difficult for the guest to pick which one, and we'll tot up the scores and we'll see who can trick or who can be good at guessing conspiracies. That's the aim anyway. Anyway, mate, that's it. That's the plan. So next week we have the wonderful Dr. Becky. You know Dr. Becky from YouTube?
Big fan.
Yeah, she's fantastic, isn't she? So we're going to talk galaxies and black holes and all that sort of stuff with Dr. Becky. Thanks very much, Catz. Everyone else, please, thank you very much for listening. Please do subscribe on iTunes and follow us on Spotify as well. And I believe I'm working on the Google podcast too, so hang in there for that one. Other than that, thanks very much, and we'll see you next time. Say bye, Catz.
See you later.